and welcome to another booktube video from me, Lauren, from Lauren and the Books. And today is one of my favourite videos to watch, one of my most prepared videos to film, and just one that I like to have a really good think about. It is my favourite books of the year. So these are my favourite books of the year 2017. I've also filmed a video midway through 2017, which God, I've got a really itchy ankle, which has got my favourite videos of the first half of 2017. Some of the books that I mentioned in that video will also appear in here, but there are also some other books that I adored that appear in there too. So I've got 10 books here. I'm a bit of I like things to be a nice round number, so I've worked at making this into 10. I've got a bit of everything. I've got picture books, I've got poetry, I've got non-fiction, I've got classics, I've got fiction. I've got it all going on, and I'm really pleased with the books that that I've picked here, because they really have been 10 of my favourites. So my sort of, before we get into it, God, blah 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 blah, my sort of definitions, I guess, of my favourite books of the year are ones that have stayed with me, or ones that were really special to me when I was reading them. And again, the main message of what a perfect book is for me, a 5-star book, is one that has stood the test of time. And these books have all absolutely stood the test of time, even ones that I've only read a week ago, because I haven't stopped thinking about them since. So yeah, there's 10 here. I'm going to work through. They're not in any particular order, aside from probably the last 3 that are probably my top 3 books of 2017, and I haven't been able to pick my favourite, but maybe by the time I get there I will have decided. But yeah, so we'll start at number 10, which is a poetry book, weirdly, and also is a Christmas book. So I read Christmas books every December. I try to read them throughout the month of December. However, I often run out by the time Christmas is almost here. But none of those books are ever my favourite books of the year. They're always books that I really enjoy. But this book, this little poetry book, which is a mere, let me have a look, it's not even that many pages long. It doesn't even tell me. 38 pages long, has been one of my favourite books of the year. And when I was reading it, it just felt so amazing and wonderful and special. And that is Another Night Before Christmas by Carol Ann Duffy. Just trying to focus in, because that needs focusing in on. Illustrated by Rob Ryan. You'll have to excuse Minnie's chatting in the background. She's scraping the wall over there. This book is a poem about another night before Christmas. The illustrations are just beautiful. They've all got these sort of scalloped edges with beautiful illustrations by Rob Ryan. And every page I turned on this, my actual breath was taken away with how beautiful and wonderful I found this poem. So my relationship with poetry is that 9 times out of 10 I don't really get it, or I feel like I don't know what the fuss is about. And I think that's probably due to me having read the wrong poetry, or not dedicating the right time or environment to it. But this all fell together perfectly. One night in December, I was sat in bed and I just read it. I've read this passage a number of times on this channel, but I can't not read it again, because it's just, I stopped and I could see it so perfectly in my mind's eye. So I really love this. And this video is going out on the 2nd of January. I've still got my Christmas tree up. I can still think about Christmas. So it says here, the hushed street was in darkness, snow duveted the cars, a stray cat had embroidered each roof with its paws, an owl on an aerial had planets for eyes, the child at the window stared up at the sky. I just adore it, and this is something that I'm going to come back to time and time again every Christmas. And if I can just encourage people to read this, then hopefully this will do this. Not for now, obviously, it's January, but absolutely love this. 5 stars, beautiful, wonderful, amazing. The next one, I can also use the words beautiful, wonderful, amazing. So the next book is another picture book, and it is by a friend of mine. So my friend Jen Campbell, who also has a booktube channel, which I'm sure you are all absolutely avid watchers of. I will link her down below. She wrote 2 books this year, the first one being a picture book and the second being a short story collection. I haven't read the short story collection yet. That is a treat for me to read in January. But the picture book I have read a number of times now, and every time I tear up. I feel so joyful, and I laugh in the same places every time, and I feel like touched in the same places, and I just adore this picture book. that is Franklin's Fine Bookshop by Jen Campbell, which is illustrated by Katie Harnett. So, I mean, this looks beautiful, doesn't it? Look at it. There's a lot of copper in here. This tells the story of Franklin and his friend Luna. Franklin is a dragon. You can see him there on the back as well with Luna. And it's a tale of friendship and acceptance and finding joy in books, and everything about this just really pleases me, and it's just perfect for me. As I said, I've read this a number of times. When I first got this sent to me before it was published, David and I read it aloud to one another. We were both laughing and giggling and just having a wonderful time. I've since read it to myself. I've since read it to, I bought it for a number of people for Christmas. I've read it to my goddaughter, and I've just loved it every single time. Every time I've loved this, and yeah, so I guess this would probably count as a reread because I've read it so many times this year, and it's something I will continue to read, and I just love it. And when your friend writes something or creates something and you want to love it, you're always sort of holding your breath, but Jen makes it so easy because this is beautiful and wonderful. So thank you, Jen, for making such an amazing book. 5 stars. They're all 5 stars, but I'm going to keep saying it, but absolutely wonderful. And I'm probably going to go, do you know what, when I finish reading this, I'm probably going to flick through, when I finish filming this, I'm probably going to flick through and read this again. So yeah, lovely. These are all going down here. I'm going to have a selection of books. The next one, oh god, look, my blanket's falling down and everything. The next one is the last in, I guess, what you would call sort of like the picture book or the shorter book range, and that is Goodnight Stories for Rebel Girls. This is a wonderful book that came to me the perfect year of my life, really. So this year in general, I've really become much prouder of being a woman, and I've found my feet in terms of feminism and girl power and things like that. And this book I would have adored and I would have desperately needed when I was growing up. This book appeals to all ages. I guess it's marketed as probably a children's book, but I learned from this, and I know a lot of other people who could do with learning from this, and I know that as a child, if I'd have had this book, then I would have felt my place in the world much more. So this is by Eleanor Favilli and Francesca Cavallo, and it is 100 stories of amazing women throughout history. Really succinctly done. Every single page looks like this. So you have the writing on one side and then a gorgeous bit of artwork the next side. All the artwork is done by women, by different women as well, and it's just wonderful. It is just, it alerted me to women I didn't know anything about. It reiterated women that I loved. It is just such a special, wonderful book that I feel like, as I've said, so many people can learn from this. The second volume is due out in the UK in March, I believe. I believe it's already out in the US, and yeah, this is just like gold. This is so precious and will do so many women and girls such a great, it will give them such a great lesson in how many fantastic women we have in our history that I had no idea about, or people that I'd forgotten about, and absolutely loved it. Think it was amazing. As I keep saying, 5 stars. So the next one is a reread. The next book is a reread, and this is a book that I've read many times. Now, in previous years I haven't included rereads, but I couldn't not include this because I really love this book anyway, and I reread it quite, like, if not every year, then every other year, although there had been a few years in between the last time I'd read it and when I read it this year. And that's Bridget Jones's Diary by Helen Fielding. So this book is, and I watched back just before I filmed this, I watched back my best books of the first half of 2017, and within that video I described this book as a best mate of a book, and that is exactly how it feels to me. It's so comforting to dip your toes back into and to get back into Bridget and her world, and how many people you know in this world that you also know in your own world, and the laughs and the camaraderie and just the joy I get from this book. It could not be included in my best books of 2017. Caitlin Moran, this is the 20th anniversary edition published by Picador, and Caitlin Moran does the introduction, and her first opening line of the introduction is, one of the loveliest things about being a human is that every 5 years or so you get to reread Bridget Jones's Diary. And I truly feel that. I really do feel that, because I've read this throughout my life. Probably the first time I read it, maybe I was like 18 or 19, and now I'm 31, and every time I read it, a little bit more means a little bit more to me, and I feel like I'm at the perfect age now to enjoy this. It can be enjoyed by any age, but at the moment I feel like I'm at Bridget's place, and I love her and I love this book, and I will continue to read it for the rest of my life and still get the same joy out of it. I just remember I laid in the bath and I opened it up, and the first page, so it's told, I mean, I'm sure you all know the thing, but it's told, it's a year in Bridget's life through her diary entries, and she starts with some New Year's resolutions of what she will not do and what she will do. And I got in the bath and I opened it and I thought, bloody hell, I love it. And it's just great to be back with a book that you love so much. So that's why it's appeared here, guys. I couldn't not include it. The next one is a non-fiction book, one that I read earlier this year, and that is The Gender Games by Juno Dawson. This is a book about gender. Juno Dawson is a woman who was, when she was born, she was assigned the gender male. She's now been, she's now transitioned and is the gender of female. And this is an amazing perspective on gender, of which I've read some amazing books this year on gender. But this one, I feel like I feel like this means most to me, in that Juno loves all the same shit that I love. So there's Spice Girls references in here, there's Buffy the Vampire Slayer references in here. She must be the same age as me, and because a lot of the things she says, I'm like, fucking hell, that's so funny. Like we've got a lot in. She's the right sort of humour for me. I follow her on Instagram as well, and I adore her. And the only regret I have about this book, is that I didn't listen to it on audio, because she also narrates the audiobook. Now I feel like that's something I'm going to treat myself to next year, listening to the audiobook of this. But adored it. It's all about her her journey from being born gender assigned male and to becoming a female, and her life, and having to say goodbye to her sort of the male person that she was born. So she was named James, and she's had to say goodbye to James, and she's now Juno. And although that's what the whole transition journey was for, like, it's obviously a big part of her she's having to say goodbye to. So really honest, really eye-opening, really funny, and just really like informal almost. Like it feels really chill when you're reading it, and like amazing. Loved it. The next book is one that I've recently read, and God, and then we're into my last 3 books. Amazing. And that is Ali Smith Winter. I read Autumn last year, very much enjoyed it, but Winter has absolutely blown Autumn out of the water. These are the only 2 Ali Smith books I've read, which is unbelievable, Autumn and Winter. I am definitely going to make a change in that in 2018. But I feel like this is another case of right book at right time. So on the run up to Christmas, as I said, I read Christmas books. I'd run out of Christmas books, and I thought, well, I want to read something wintry. Well, what better book to read than Winter? Which is, what wintry book could be possibly better than a book named Winter? And I love this. So there's so many different levels of this. The sort of the bare bones storyline is that a chap called Art has broken up with his girlfriend Charlotte, and he's returning home for Christmas, and he pays someone to come and stay with him and his mother, to act as though she is Charlotte. That's the sort of, and then there's the sort of relationship with his mother and his mother's relationship with her sister, who's his aunt, and things like that. But there's so many layers to this, and so it's so topical, and I've never read a book that's felt so relevant, and like it was like reading a newspaper. Like these things are happening now, and it just felt amazing and incredible. It was funny, endearing, heartbreaking, sad. It was a whole roller coaster of amazement. And I feel like the actual seasonal quartet, when it's complete, because I believe there's going to be a spring and a summer book, as a whole thing is going to be some powerful text, guys, because this is just wonderful, and it's just so readable. Yeah, it's so readable and so wonderful. And as I mentioned in my Jen's getting 2 mentions, as I mentioned in my favourites video, which went up yesterday, halfway through reading this, Jen Campbell put up a video saying that this has been one of her favourite books of the year, and I watched that video, and that really brought out so many more themes and things that I didn't identify when reading it, and like made me love this book even more. So I will link that video down below as well. But amazing, amazing. Loved it, loved it. So the last books, the last 3 books, so these next 3 books can be in any sort of order of which in which way I have, like, all of these 10 books have been my 10 favourite books of the year, but these last 3 books are ones that have really, really been big in my 2017 that I feel like I'll be thinking about for a really long time. 2 of which are by the same author. I'll start with one that isn't by that author, and that's English Animals by Laura Kay. Now this is Laura Kay's debut novel, and I absolutely have to show you this cover because it's amazing. And this was a bit of a surprise to me. I didn't expect to love this as much as I did. So this tells the story of Mirka, who takes a job working for a husband and wife in the country on an estate. She believes she's being hired to be an au pair, but when she gets there she realises that she's being taken on as the assistant to the husband in the relationship, Richard, as a taxidermist assistant. She is really shocked by this. She in the job description it says, do you mind handling dead animals, and she thought that meant do you mind cooking meat, and yeah, and it sort of follows that. It's really quiet, and there's it's a real good sort of study on relationships and friendships. So she is very fond of Richard, and she has a really, really wonderful friendship with him, but Richard's wife Sophie, she has a romantic relationship with. So it's sort of how do you care for 2 people when what you're doing is essentially splitting them up and things like that. I really love like the quieter moments in this, for instance, like when they're just down the pub having a meal and things like that. I read this earlier on in the year and I loved it, and it's something that I often think about, and in a weird way I often forget it only to realise that I've read it and remember how wonderful it was. So I really, really love this, and yeah, I feel like it's a wonderful, wonderful read, and just enjoyable and lovely. And something I did really enjoy throughout it is that at the beginning of the book it reads as very disjointed because Mirka's first language isn't English, but by the end of the book it's really flowing and wonderful because she's much more familiar with the language and the way things work and things like that. So yeah, it's just a beautiful, beautiful book and really enjoyable. So yeah, very much enjoyed that, and that's a debut novel. I can't wait to read what more stuff she's got out. Must look into that actually. So the last 2 books are books by the same author, one of which I don't have, which I'll talk about first. They're both by Lionel Shriver. Now I have never read any Lionel Shriver until this year, and I feel really like excited that I've got a lot more Lionel Shriver to read. However, I would definitely like people's advice on where to go next because I don't want to read anything shit by her. So the first one that I've read that I haven't got here with me, and that is the PostBirthday World. I will insert a picture of the front cover here, which I'm not mad on actually. And the PostBirthday World by Lionel Shriver is a book that was recommended to me by Mercedes from the channel Mercy's Bookish Musing. Again, I'm sure you're very familiar with her. And it tells the story of a married couple, Irina and Lawrence, and every year on Lawrence's birthday, by some sort of like unfortunate thing, because nobody ever really wants to go, but they end up going out for dinner with one of their friends called Ramsey, who is a world famous snooker player. Now one year Lawrence can't make the meal and sort of says to Irina, oh, just go anyway. So she goes out for the meal with Ramsey anyway, and in one version of the story her and Ramsey share a kiss at the end of the night, and then in the other version of the story they do not kiss. So from that point on, so the first chapter you get 1 chapter, and then from then on you get 2 chapter 2s, 2 chapter 3, 2 chapter 4s, etc, 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 where one thread of it follows if Irina and Ramsey share a kiss, and the other follows if they do not. I love this, and when watching back my video talking about it before, what I mentioned is that it feels like you're really in on stuff, and you feel like a confidant almost when you're reading this book. It feels really private, and I loved hearing the similarities and the differences between what still would have happened in these people's lives, even if it had gone this way or it had gone that way. And it just felt so clever to me and so original, and I really, really loved it, and I feel like it's an amazingly written piece of work and a really amazing storyline. I was gripped. There was so much of it as well. It's quite a chunky book anyway, and the texts are really small, but it didn't at any time feel like a chore. It was just, I was just eating it up with joy at how much I enjoyed it. Again, it's going to be one that I'm definitely going to go back and visit, and also it's got so much snooker in it, but I still really enjoyed it. So yeah, that is fighting out for a place of my best books of 2017. And the last book is also another book by her. It is The Standing Chandelier by Lionel Shriver, which is a novella. It's not very long at all. I think it's 120 something pages, maybe not even that. I'll tell you, 122. I got this for my Secret Santa at Christmas. David bought this for me. And again, another masterpiece of writing. Just her writing is just incredible. And to fit so much in such a short space of time, in a similar way that she fits so much into a big book in the Post-Birthday World. But this is a story, again, between a couple. Well, it tells the story of a friendship between a male and a female character, Frisk and Gillian and Weston, their friendship, which has on a couple of occasions strayed into something more than a friendship, a sexual relationship and potentially a loving relationship, but that's all in the past now. They play tennis every week, and they're very good, like on more than one occasion every week. They're very good friends. Gillian has a sort of air about her when not many people like her, but Weston is very fond of her, so she really clings on to him. And then Weston meets somebody else and wants to marry that person, and that person isn't very keen on Gillian and says that she wants him to have nothing more to do with him. And it's really in-depth and amazing sort of education almost on relationships and what you're seeing from the inside and what you're seeing from the outside, and what's actually going on and what's not going on. And yeah, and the title, The Standing Chandelier, refers to a piece of artwork that Gillian's working on, that in order to prove how happy she is for Weston and his new wife, she gifts to them. And his new wife's really unhappy about this because now there's a piece of art in their lives that's going to remind them of her forever, and then something happens with that art and she wants to keep it. And yeah, there's just so much to it and fro in. And I'll mention again, I've said before on this channel that I looked into Lionel Shriver, having read the Post-Birthday World, and one of the things she says is that she likes to write characters which are really hard to love, and having read 2 of her books, that is absolutely true. And there's parts of these characters that you think, you're thinking, well, you're so in the wrong here, and then the next part you're thinking, well, that person's so in the wrong, that person's so in the wrong, and they're really whole characters. She writes really whole characters. And yeah, I loved, and having read 2 of her books this year has been amazing, and I urge you all to recommend me where I should go to next. I'm potentially thinking maybe Big Brother, but would be really keen to know which other Lionel Shriver books people have read. Look at this guy, looks like a little dementor or something. Other Lionel Shriver books people have read, and I would love to hear about them. So yeah, those are my favourite books as I fiddle with this book. Ah, put it down! As I fiddle with my blanket. Those are my best books of 2017. Would love to hear what your best books of 2017 have been, and if you've read any of these guys, and if you've enjoyed them. 2017 has been a great year. I read 139 books in 2017. My goal was 150, which I didn't reach that. I am in no way treating the fact that I read 139 books as a failure. 139 books, guys. I don't even know how many that is a day. I think that's like a book every 3 days or something. Yeah, so I feel like I've done amazing. So yeah, there's been some great books and some not so great books. But yeah, so those are the books that I've read and loved in 2017. Would love to hear what you have read, and I will see you all again soon for another book review video. Bye guys.